What's up, y'all? In this episode of Rolling Stoned, we're talking about California. And of course, California being the West Coast and epicenter for all things music related and music industry related, right? It's kind of an important issue then that we have so much homelessness going on. Well, let's take a look at the brilliant writers over at the Rolling Stone, because I'm sure they have it all figured out and they're going to tell us how to fix this issue. 𝓢𝓽𝓲𝓷𝓮� has been a Niners fan since she was a kid living on the east side of San Jose. The couple and their children, ages 3 to 14, have been homeless. Last December, the family began spending nights at a parking lot of a community center just off the Capitol Expressway, right around some of the country's richest companies. Apple's Infinite Loop, the Googleplex, Facebook. The lower wage workers who make this community run are struggling to meet a basic human need, which is shelter. You know, it's funny, isn't it? Google and Facebook, they're solving so many of the world's pressing problems and figuring out how to make it easier to Google, what the latest celebrity gossip is and, who Brad Pitt married this month. But somehow they have not really seem to be spending a lot of resources on how to make sure that people have homes. You'd think that with the billions of dollars, they would have contributed something to that. So here's Google pledged $1 billion to help ease the Bay Area's housing crunch, but that sum is only eye-popping until you hear experts explain it would cost $14 billion to execute the company's vision of building 20,000 homes. 14 billion to 20,000, 1 billion. So that's what? About 1,000, 2,000 houses? And so we start with the emotionally charged demonization and political rhetoric right away. The city of San Jose apparently opened up some sort of parking lot here. The lot's first night of operation was last November, and a couple of weeks after, San Jose voters rejected a small property tax increase that would have funded the construction of affordable housing. So if it wasn't for those darn San Jose voters, the people that actually worked and pay their bills and live in the county, why can't they just be quiet? Why can't they just go away and let the city dictate what part of their street and what part of their neighborhood should be repurposed as a homeless parking lot tent city? It's just a patch of concrete. Amador says her family feels safer here than on the street by themselves. But are they really? It seems like you're just putting a lot of homeless people and drug dealers and criminals into the same place. The problem is the economy's too good. Their little single-family home is like over $1 million, and they end up on the street and on drugs. And so it becomes a spiraling problem that, in my opinion, the local and like city governments are contributing to rather than actually fixing. But they claim that they have the perfect solution here, and Rolling Stone is, of course, on their side. It's a dynamic happening across California. It's just happening. And so here's the big problem here. California's housing problem is one of scarcity. So according to one analysis, the state has 3.5 million fewer homes than it needs to house all the people who live there. So that gap was created largely as a result of zoning policies of individual communities under pressure from local residents. So again, if it weren't for those dastardly local residents. Oh, but don't you know, this year was the year when California was poised to fix its housing crisis. Finally, it came up with a fix. And so what's the fix here? Let me guess, it's some kind of government legislation that's supposed to fix this. The president pro tempore of the state senate, Tony Atkins, created a new committee devoted exclusively to housing and appointed San Francisco State Senator Scott Wiener at its head. And so bearded and bespectacled, which is important for some reason, I guess because they want you to think that he's like really manly because he has a beard, and he must be a really smart genius because he wears spectacles. San Francisco was emerging from a recession, and as more money flowed into the city, competition for the limited units available was intensifying and rents shot through the roof. So the bearded genius, Mr. Wiener, arriving in Sacramento like a time traveler with grim tidings from the future. The top priority was SB 50, an ambitious proposal that would prohibit cities from having zoning laws like Atherton's. Residential neighborhoods, historically reserved for single-family homes, would be opened up to multi-unit housing like triplexes and fourplexes. So it'll just be opened up, freedom, really positive framing of this, okay? Wiener knew SB 50 would be a battle. Why would it be a battle if it's such a perfect, flawless solution based on his earlier efforts at zoning reform, which were met with ferocious backlash from homeowners? There we go again. These darn homeowners, they're vicious. They're just these evil, hateful people that don't want huge triplexes and fourplexes being built in their neighborhood. Hey, Wiener, which district do you live in? How about we put the triplexes in your backyard? How does that sound? So here are some of the concerns of these awful, terrible homeowners. A proposed development would cast a shadow, blot out the sun, increase traffic, impact the value of their homes, many of which have been dramatically appreciating in value as a direct result of the state's housing shortage. So apparently these guys are benefiting from the homelessness problem because, it clearly appreciates the value of their house. So obviously they would want there to be more homelessness. And that's how this journalist is framing this story. The homeowners in California are in favor of homelessness because it allows their houses to appreciate in value. Now, does that make sense to you? Because I'm trying to be fair here. That just seems a little bit ridiculous. At the heart of the argument against SB 50 from both ends of the economic spectrum is a desire for local control and a belief that the people closest to the problem can diagnose it more accurately than lawmakers far removed from these communities, which that sounds like it makes a little bit more sense than homeowners in California want homelessness to run rampant. The fact that cities left to their own devices have not built enough housing, and it just keeps getting worse. Well, have they not built enough housing? Seems like a pretty stated fact by the Rolling Stone. But we'll find out a little bit later that this is actually not true. The bill's progress was abruptly halted, shelved without public discussion or a vote by the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Senator Anthony Portantino. This bright Italian gentleman says the problem with SB 50 is not that it poses a threat to wealthy communities, but that it would hurt working-class cities. Many of them are Latino communities, immigrant communities. Developers would swoop in, erect market-rate buildings, drive lower-income folks out, because SB 50 is not about affordable housing. The lion's share of it is market-rate housing, and as we know, the market rate is skyrocketing and has been since the 70s. It's not a solution, according to Jan Loving, an advocate for the homeless. Jen Loving is not loving the homeless population. So this cold-hearted criminal says anything that is not solving homelessness is an interim measure. Shelters, safe parking, temporary stuff. It's providing a little bit more safety than people just out on the streets. But we're not ending homelessness that way. Ending homelessness in the state of California requires political courage at the state and local levels. It's a test. We're going to make it through or we're not. I think we're going to. I got a lot of faith. Well, you know what? Faith is not going to give every single of the thousands of homeless people $1 million to buy market rate houses. It's just not. They're going to have to call a shot that's not going to make everybody happy. It seems to me what they're doing instead is trying to appease people and trying to paint a nice, pretty picture about what they want to do and what they would like to see and how, oh, this bill is a solution and this bill is a solution, and those darn tax-paying citizens just won't let us solve the problem. I think in reality, it's much more like lip service. They want to keep up a nice public appearance and do a whole lot of virtue signaling about how they're really for the little guy and really for the homeless people. But, we're not going to build any high rises in our ritzy-ditzy neighborhoods. Yeah, it's pretty grim. We don't even have that in most places in Baltimore. So some of these guys protesting, density is not the way. Where's the parking? Who will pay? We don't want 7-story buildings looming over our houses. And, you can kind of understand that. The Rolling Stone article was talking about the problem is just they don't have enough houses built. There's just not enough space for these people. If they would just figure out a way to build more houses. So I was doing a little bit of digging here, and vacant California has over 1 million vacant housing units. 1,102,583. You think they could rent out some of those empty 1 million houses to the homeless population? Maybe. So with the repeal of Glass-Steagall investment banks, we're able to flood the market with demand for junk mortgage-backed securities, and the desire to live in these markets was suddenly pushed to another level. All people needed to buy was a pen with ink and a willing attitude to sign on a dotted line. And here's the house prices, and California is this blue line, and there it goes. And there's the national U.S. level there. Banks are moving on shadow inventory in mid-tier markets. So these banks would rather speculate and gamble their money away rather than actually making legitimate loans to people who can legitimately pay them back. Last up here, I figured I would end it on kind of a positive note. So like I said, I was doing some digging, and I found a couple of examples of what, in my opinion, is a much more appropriate solution to the homelessness problem. Eugene, Oregon is a city with a reputation of doing something to house the homeless and of doing its best to extend other kinds of help in the meantime. Under strict rules, the aim is to give a person a certain amount of stability for 3 months in a safe place without being penalized while they try to figure out how to stop being homeless. So they're taken care of, but only for 3 months. So there's a limitation. There's structure that's imposed. Instead of just putting a Band-Aid on this like missing limb of a problem, they're actually taking out the sutures and sewing it together one person at a time, one homeless person at a time. And so we'll end it on this note. There's an old story often told by the socially conscious about a beach where thousands of starfish are washed up on the sand. When a little boy picks one up and flings it back in the water, his father says, "It's pointless. You can't save them all." With relentless logic, his son replies, "Maybe not, but I saved that one." And that's what it comes down to. I feel like the city is trying to put forth all of these sweeping regulations. They're throwing the community that voted them into office under the bus completely. But what do you guys think? How would you propose to solve this? I think the example from Oregon is probably the best one I could find. If you have any more, definitely let us know in the comments down below, and we'll keep it going. But that's all I got for you in this video. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like if you like. Comment down below if you've got some more illuminating information on this story. Subscribe, hit the bell. Hit it 2 times, hit it 3 times. Definitely give it a share. Send it to everybody you know. And so there it is. The homelessness crisis in California solved with, of course, one piece of legislation. And, we could all learn a lot from the time-traveling genius, Mr. Wiener. Just pass another piece of legislation and get a bunch of financial kickbacks from the building companies and the shadow banks. And that's how you get the money.